we're programmed to respond with fear. That's how we survived all of these centuries and centuries. And it's the way we survive now. If we're in danger, we respond with fear, which means typically either we fight or we flee. The difficulty comes in when we're afraid of the wrong things, when what we're fearful of is something that isn't as dangerous as we think it is, and we respond by being fearful, meaning that we flee or we fight with the situation we're in, when really we need to be putting our energy somewhere else. In American society, we're constantly bombarded with fears and scares that are blown out of proportion. You can't turn on the TV news, local TV news, or the news networks, whether it's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, take your choice, without being terrified of something within probably a half hour or an hour of having it on, if not sooner. And the reason is that they need to keep their ratings up and they need to have dramatic stories. That's part of their business. But what it means is that we're constantly hearing about horribly scary things that really are very unlikely to affect us. Some of what we hear about in the news and from politicians, from advocacy groups, sometimes from marketers of various products, tell us that, oh, you know, there's this new thing that we need to worry about, that if we don't deal with it, something horrible is going to happen. Either we better buy a product or protect ourselves somehow, or vote for the right candidate. And much of the time, what those are about, the focus of those things, is something that really we probably either don't have to worry about at all, or that's very low on the list of things we really need to worry about, but it's good business for the people who are promoting it. My favorite current example of this, that's been going on for a while, is antibacterial soaps. Multi-billion-dollar market. Now, unless you work in a hospital environment or you have some very special need, you don't need antibacterial soaps. If you wash your hands properly with any soap, you'll get the same benefit, and there's a side effect that we don't talk about. You see, one of the big issues in this culture of fear that we live in is by going in the wrong direction, going with these fears that are blown out of proportion, that have been exaggerated to us, we create new problems. We create new problems for ourselves, for others, for the society. In the case of antibacterial soaps, for instance, there's a big problem with resistant bacteria. Now, some studies recently have suggested that this widespread use of antibacterial soaps contributes to that. Seems pretty likely. What are we doing? We're thinking, wow, we've heard that, you know, the environment around us is so dangerous. There are all these microbes everywhere. Everything is polluted and dangerous. And so, you know, we're going to always wash with antibacterial soaps. I mean, we've been told that our whole house is just so germ-infested, no matter how much we clean it, that we better be afraid, and it's certainly outside in public. So we go for antibacterial soaps. What does that do? Increases resistance, bacterial resistance, and we create a new problem. More than that, we send a message to our children, to our families. It's particularly important with our children. We're telling them, hey, everywhere around you is horribly dangerous. You need this special product to protect you. Be careful. Anything you touch could make you horribly ill. Children are brought up in this society to believe that everybody around them, everything around them, is horribly dangerous to them. And it's a terrible message to send to the next generation. To tell little children that they shouldn't trust anybody or anything is to raise a generation that is going to be fearful, that is not going to want to participate in public as much. You know, they're going to be afraid of everything. It's going to be overly self-protective, probably overly reactive to all kinds of political messages and marketing messages and so forth. More than that, what do children need? They need to be calm and focused and enjoy their childhood if they're going to learn and develop properly. Add extra fear, unnecessary fear, you create exactly the wrong outcome for good development for children.
And you pointed out in your book that the culture of fear, the whole child abduction scenario. Can you talk about that?
Many parents, maybe most parents in America these days, have the wrong impression that they've gotten from the media and from politicians that if they don't watch their children out in public every second, their child will be snatched off the playground, snatched out of the toy store by some stranger who's going to kill them, do horrible things to them and kill them. It's understandable that people think this because we periodically, I estimate about once every 1 year to 18 months, go through this hysteria about this in this country where the TV news especially, but also the newspapers and politicians are talking incessantly about child kidnapping and making it sound like it's this really common situation. Well, this is a good example of what we think we know isn't what is. Children do get kidnapped, not in large numbers, but who's the kidnapper? Usually someone they know, usually, sadly, a family member in a custody battle or some sort of other sort of family dispute. The number of children kidnapped by strangers, kept for a long time, or killed is about 100 to 150 a year, roughly, based on the government's figures. That's about the last thing that a parent should worry about. That's about the least likely serious danger that a child is going to face. The more we focus on those kinds of little dangers, the more we bring up a generation that's terrified of everybody and everything, which is not a good thing to do as a parent or as a civilization over the long haul, but we do it because we have this misimpression. If we ask instead, well, what are some more prevalent dangers? If I really want to protect my child, what should I do? You say, don't worry that much about them being snatched away by a stranger in a public place. Well, what should I be worried about? See, and then if I answer that question, guess what? It's really boring stuff. Why do the news media not cover the really prevalent dangers? Because they're commonplace, they're boring. Best advice to a parent, if you're going to do one thing to protect your child from serious danger, get a bike helmet and make sure they wear it. Most things that are going to happen to your child, if they're going to happen at all, are those sorts of things. But parents instead often are really obsessed with these really unlikely dangers. One of the biggest scares in the last decade, it lasted for a long time, fortunately has faded recently, is the scare about violent young people in schools. We came to believe, and many Americans still believe, that just about every young American male is a potential mass murderer. Now that's a terrible way to think about a generation of people, especially this generation, because in fact their violent crime rate was going down. It's been going down consistently, and over that period when we were most afraid, guess what? It was dropping precipitously. It wasn't going up, it was going down. So how did we believe the opposite? Through a procedure that we all need to be aware of. Anecdotes that are taken as evidence or trends. There were plenty of examples that could be given in the news media of school shootings, of violence at schools, terrible incidents, but they were isolated incidents, and they were very uncommon. In the worst year, according to the media, I mean the year when you just couldn't turn on TV without hearing about one of these incidents, 9 out of 10 public schools in the United States had no serious incident of violence, never mind a shooting. And in fact, the rates of serious violence and shooting had been going down and were continuing to go down. Even in that tragic year when we had the horrible event at Columbine High School in Colorado, even if you include that incident, there were fewer deaths and serious injuries at schools that year than in the early 90s when we weren't worrying about it.